We can go ahead and call the work session to order for May 21st, 2018. I'm filling in for the mayor tonight. The mayor and ED Director Matt Tapp are out on city business. And we got two things on the agenda. And I think we have another two. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Fairborn.
Thank you, sir. First item on the agenda tonight is to give the council an update on our annexation, our voluntary annexation process and program that we started in January. I feel like we're at a point where the people who are going to contact us have, and you can see within the packet those who have, to kind of give an outline at this point in time. 3 of the properties are supportive of it. We did invite them to get back in touch with us as soon as they wanted to and start the process with community development to get in. None of them have made that contact back with us. The 2 that are in yellow on the map on page 9 of the packet are somewhat supportive of coming in. Well, kind of feel like if we stay after them, they'll want to come in. Both of those on the south side of 58. And then in red, we had the property way out there on the west side that is unsupportive of it and was extremely unsupportive of wanting to voluntarily come in. And then, of course, you've all heard about the interesting other meeting we had with several groups of residents relative to that. They're included in the not supportive. Our thinking is that at this point in time, and by the way, in answer to one of your questions, council member, we received 1 returned envelope, and it was from that large group subdivision. That's the only one that was returned to us. The recommendation from staff at this point is to press the issue of getting a response from the folks by sending this new letter that was at your places this evening, asking for a direct response. We would send this primarily, we'd send it to everybody who was along here, including the ones we've already talked to. We would not be sending it to the subdivision number 30 on your list. The thought is that we would send it with postage paid return envelope, try to encourage people so that we could, and we put a deadline on there where we would like them to contact us. One of the primary things we are hearing from people, even the people who are against it, is they want to see 58 updated. So we put that in there, the items that they would like to see, because we heard from some people who didn't even respond to this about improvements on 58. So that would be our recommendation going forward. We'd like to get this letter out with you all's approval as quickly as possible, this week if we can. And that kind of concludes staff report on this item, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. We still believe that a targeted, as I was saying just before the meeting here, we still believe a targeted approach is our best bet, because we can explain 2 things. Our reasoning on this is we want to get to 291 because years ago we made a mistake in not getting to 49, and it may be decades, but we want to be the ones who have that intersection because we can do better with it than anybody else can. And the second reason is we all want to see improvements on 58 Highway. Those are our 2 points of reasoning. I can tell the council if we get all of these properties, I've said this to you many times, because a majority of these properties are actually zoned agricultural, and they would remain zoned agricultural, the revenue to the city would probably, we would not make what the cost of services is going to be. I would anticipate having to bring on at least one more officer down there, and as you can see from the revenues just on the ones that came in, it just wouldn't, that alone would probably make it a break-even proposition, let alone any other services we had to pay. But that's one of the things we're used to. There are volumes written on why no housetop pays for the services that are provided to it. So that concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Any questions? Mr. Barrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, also for your presentation. I think you're right. The changes on 58 are really needed for safety and traffic and flow. And I realize that, this is not going to be a win financially for us for a long time. But I do believe it's a very important investment in the future of the city. I think it's vital that we get out there to 291. And I appreciate the city's efforts on this, and I look forward to seeing where this goes. Thank you.
Mr. Crow?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Again, when I'm reading this, obviously MoDOT wants us to work on getting it annexed before they really want to move into that intersection. They say they obviously want us to see if the rest of the highway can be annexed into the city before moving forward on those projects. So they're really pushing us to try to get some kind of acceptance from the people while they sit on that corner knowing it's coming, but they don't want to do much to see where we're going to go, obviously. And again, it takes investment to make investment. And as an upgrowing, moving forward city, I see it's kind of been a big thing, I think, for years, to kind of not get landlocked going east and control that area and own it for the time when it does open up to 291 coming south from 150 and down. So I think, yeah, it's a good idea. And I think it looks like MoDOT's saying, hey, you guys get out there and make the initiative. You guys get most of this locked up. Then if you can get this, we'll jump in and give you a nice kickstart. So thank you.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Just want to make sure, your earlier comments before with regard to this annexation discussion, it is in no way we're going to increase revenues in this effort. We're not going to have a, this is not an effort to substantially increase revenues. As what the package has shown tonight, what I've seen from the residents that are on the listing here, it's not going to be, as I heard earlier, the return on investment, I would say, is nothing significant. From a citizen's viewpoint, that we're aggressively trying to annex individuals into the city limits with the anticipation of getting more revenue.
2 points to that. You're absolutely correct. This is not for getting revenue from citizens whatsoever. It's to control the future of 291 and 58 Highway, sir. The second thing is that this would in no way lead to an increase in taxes for people already in the city. That was false information that was put out during the last one, and at the 11th hour before the second vote, for those of you who can remember it, in a pretty sneaky way, I might add, by having it sound like it was a survey. So yes, this is in no way would in no way increase taxes on any existing citizens within the city.
Excellent. Thank you. And that was my read-in as well, and my assumption. I just want to make sure that it was explicitly stated for those who may be misreading the purpose behind the discussion. So, thank you.
I was just going to make a comment about, with the school out there, 58 Highway definitely needs improvements. There's children going in and out, and not only the people that live on us, and I know that it affects quite a few people here. You can look at all the different colors here, but there is, I think, too many emergency vehicles that have to come in 58 due to, you know, it's an archaic road. It wasn't built to have that school out there. It wasn't really built to have the connectivity to 291 like 291's doing. So I think it's something that needs to happen, and I think there are some folks reading the information here that understand that too. And I want to thank staff. This is a lot of information. I know there's a lot of moving parts in putting this together, and there's still a lot of work to do, but I do appreciate all this information. And I just kind of want to leave with something. I thought about this when I was looking at the packet. When people talk about planting a tree, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. And annexation, I think, is the same way. You're doing something for the future. So we're going to have to do something and think about 20, 25 years down the road. Thank you. Anything else? Oh, Mr. Holman?
Just to the point at hand, I am in support of staff's recommendation of, how did you put it, pushing the issue a little bit, sending the envelope, setting the deadline. I think that's a good way to proceed. I'm in support of that.
Has everybody seen the picture that's over the copier in our break room? They brought it in here one time. It's the old map of the city of Raymore, but there's a picture on the frame is the old map of the city of Raymore, but there's a picture on it, and it looks like about a 1953 era vehicle is driving past the city of Raymore, population 4,000, and it's out on 58, and I don't think that road's changed since that picture was taken. So yes, we do need to update it a little bit.
All right, no more questions. We can go to the second item, item B, tornado warning system. And Mr. Fairborn, I turn that over to you as well.
Thank you. And I am going to turn it over to Mr. Murdoch, smartly dressed tonight, and to Chief Zimmerman to talk about tornado warning systems.
I don't really know what that means in terms of the way I'm dressed on other days, but first off, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share some information regarding the warning siren system here within Raymore. Obviously with storms last year and then 2 weeks ago having to sound the sirens here, it's a good refresher. And hopefully after we're done tonight, you'll have some pretty good answers that you can give if people happen to call you and ask different questions about our policies, procedures, why we sound them, when we sound them, and why they maybe can't hear them, because we get obviously phone calls every single time that we do sound the sirens in regards to why we did it and whether or not they could actually hear them. I should also note, by the way, on this particular presentation that a couple of the things in it were at the behest of my boss. First and foremost, the title up there. I am not nicknamed the Extreme, but if you're familiar with the movie Twister, you might be familiar at least with that particular reference. And in some cases, it might be better than some of the other nicknames that I've been given throughout my life. We're going to start real quick here with a state of Missouri, about a 90-second clip. And the reason we want to start with this tonight is to make sure that you understand that throughout the state of Missouri, there is Missouri Storm Aware. And they're the ones who try to put out a uniform campaign of this is what warning sirens are, this is what they're designed to do. And unfortunately, a lot of times that message is getting lost a little bit as it gets out to local communities. And so I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that this is what the state is recommending, and then we'll go into the specifics about our particular system.
Despite the technological advances, it's important to understand the limitations of all outdoor warning systems. Here and across Missouri, sirens are installed in the most densely populated areas and cannot reach everyone. And remember, the sirens are an outdoor warning system. They are not designed to alert people inside homes and buildings.
But it's still an outdoor system. For indoor coverage, you still should listen to the radio, have a weather alert radio system, because this is not going to wake you up in your house at 2 o'clock in the morning.
According to the National Weather Service, the sirens are an alert to observe conditions around you. If there is a visible imminent weather threat, immediately take shelter in the safest structure available. If there is no sign of an imminent threat, go indoors and immediately get additional information about the storm from a local television station, weather radio, or online. When a siren stops sounding, it does not mean that the potential weather threat has passed. Across Missouri, sirens are generally sounded for about 3 minutes, not until the threat ends. And most communities do not resound a siren indicating the threat has passed. Many areas of Missouri, particularly rural areas, do not have sirens. But in areas with sirens, it's important to know how and when your community tests its sirens, what it means when they sound, the actions to take in response, and to be aware of the siren's limited capabilities. It's all part of being storm aware.
And some of the questions that are posed within that particular very, very quick clip, we will go through in this particular presentation. If you have questions as we go through some of this particular information, please stop me and go ahead and ask as we go through some of this. Chief Zimmerman is handing out a sheet, a packet that has a couple of things in it. It's going to have the frequently asked questions about warning systems. This is drawn from the National Weather Service, but it's adapted for the city of Raymore. And so it has some of those particular questions that sometimes probably you may ask, and especially citizens ask, and some of the phone calls that we get in regards to our warning system and when we activate that. Behind the frequently asked questions, you'll see a map of our siren coverage, the most updated map that we have of our siren coverage, and then the final page is just the actual siren locations, and you can match those up. So the map has number 1, that corresponds obviously to the number 1 siren location. You might notice there that number 5, we actually control 10 sirens, but number 5 is essentially a dummy siren, and that's so that when we get ready to add another siren as our city grows, we already have the software and licensing capability for it. And that's why, so number 5 is not actually a physical siren. Oh, all right, so some basic facts. So up on the screen, you'll see some of the very basic facts about our particular system. So we control 8 sirens within the city of Raymore, and as you might be aware, we also control the warning siren for Lake Winnebago. That could become a little bit of a discussion point as Lake Winnebago expands. They are going to put in a second siren as they open up their new dam, and so that'll be something that we'll want to keep in mind as we go forward. So we control technically 9 sirens. We do sound them in unison, meaning we do not sound just one siren when we decide to sound them. We will not actively target just one siren, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and we'll get to that as we go through the presentation. As you probably saw on the map handout, we do have overlapping coverage almost throughout the entire city. There are a few gaps in that where we don't have some overlapping coverage, or where we have some very limited coverage, as you probably will see, and especially as we get farther south throughout our city limits. Typically, when we ask citizens if they are outdoors, especially on those particular test days, if they can hear the sirens, there's usually no problems with that. And we usually have people who will tell us that they can hear multiple sirens, or that you have people that are hearing Belton sirens. We have officers who go to multiple siren locations to make sure that they are rotating. They also are part kind of that monthly test. So they'll go to 2 or 3 different sites. They'll make sure that they're rotating properly, that they're sounding properly, and then the next month they'll go to 2 or 3 different sites. So we rotate them each and every month based on how we test them. We can activate the warning sirens either from the Police Communications Center Dispatch Center, or we can activate them from my office. A less desirable way to do that, we can technically activate them from the radio within my truck. I don't recommend that because that means I'm out in the middle of the tornado. So I would appreciate it if we don't do that. But we typically are physically here. Myself or Chief Zimmerman or both of us are here downstairs in Police Dispatch or my office making that decision on whether or not to sound them. And that was kind of that last particular point. And there are some set protocols of how we decide to activate the sirens, and we'll get to that here in just a second. Any questions on this first one? Okay. Just like the video indicated, we do try our very best to follow the recommendations from the state of Missouri. So we do sound our sirens for exactly 3 minutes, and they will shut off. We do not sound an all clear, just like the video said, and that has been something that we have gotten calls on, and citizens often wonder why they don't hear anything as an all clear. Our typical response, and something you could tell them is if we sound them again, for most people that means the threat is still there, and they're going to think that the threat is still there. And so we don't want to try to sound sirens to give them an all clear, because for most people that means that they still think that there is a threat from the storm. We have had situations where this third bullet really does apply, where it says during long warning periods, we will sound them multiple times. We have a policy, and Chief and I are kind of laughing because, was it 2 years ago, Chief? I think it was 2 years ago when we had the storms come through in July. We had a warning period, a tornado warning over the city of Raymore for a little over an hour, which is an extremely long period of time to have a tornado warning going, an active tornado warning. And as a result of storm spotters, we ended up sounding the sirens multiple times to make sure that our feeling at that particular point was better safe than sorry, and we needed our residents to know this is a bad storm and it is not moving. It is literally sitting over the city of Raymore, and they needed to stay in their shelters. And so that's why we ended up sounding them, I think it was 4 or 5 times, to make sure that people understood that this is a really bad storm and it is not getting through our area very quickly. We do consult with the city of Belton when sounding sirens, or we try to consult with them. And this is, again, to try to avoid that confusion of people who are over on the west side of the city, so that if Belton is sounding their sirens, we want to try to make sure that we feel it's necessary to sound ours as well, so that everybody is getting the same message. Hey, get indoors. And same thing from the city of Belton. They will consult us if we're getting ready to sound our sirens as well. We do get that call as well, so that hopefully we're going in tandem between the two cities, because that's a lot of real estate that we got to cover very, very quickly between Belton and the city of Raymore. We do test them monthly, as you probably hear. It's the first Wednesday at 11 a.m. What most people don't know is we do silently test our sirens every single day at 8 a.m. I get 12 emails at exactly 8:01 a.m. every single day that lets us know that the sirens are working properly, or in some cases I might get 13 or 14 if they're not working properly, at which point we can call Blue Valley Public Safety, which is also on this particular slide, who does the maintenance and updating of our sirens. They will come out and do any repairs necessary, and they typically get those repairs done within 24 to 48 hours. I have not had a time that I have called them for repairs to our siren system where it has taken longer than 72 hours, which is really, really good. And that's fantastic that they are that fast in getting out to update those particular things. So the current contract that we have with Blue Valley Public Safety, we do have annual maintenance, which means that they do come out twice a year to check our sirens in the spring and fall. So prior to storm season, they come out, they do all battery changes, they make sure that rotations, there's no rust, all that kind of stuff, especially from the cold weather in the winter. And this winter, we did have some issues, obviously, with those cold days around the new year when it got well below zero, where we had some issues with the sirens that needed to get fixed in the spring. They came out, they took care of those. That's all a part of our contract. We don't pay anything extra for that. So they come and they switch out all of that, and then they also come inside here and they update all of our computer software to make sure that everything is aligned and ready to go as we enter storm season. They are a fantastic company so far to work with. We've had really, really good results with them. Then we get into where it really impacts the public a lot here, which is the limitations that our warning siren system has. Many people, obviously, and we do get this call every single time there's a storm, and we sound the sirens. We do get the call. I couldn't hear them when I was in my basement. To which we want to initially say, I'm actually glad that you couldn't hear them because you were in your basement. But people do think that they should be able to hear the sirens indoors. They're not going to hear them if they're in their basement, unless they obviously have a home that is right near one of the sirens, in which case they might be able to. But they're only designed to get people to get indoors if they are outdoors. So you're going to hear them outside. You probably are not going to hear them indoors, and they are designed that way. We do have some different areas here within Raymore, and I'm going to give one example here where elevation and stuff like that and some of the hills do impact where the siren is actually traveling, and that is the siren number 4, which is all the way out at Hubach and Chardon. I think I said that right. And that siren is in a great location, but at the same time, as you probably know, there are a couple of severe valleys that come down off of Fubach Hill, especially down there by Jay. And that particular region, the sound does not travel as well in that particular location. But that's a very necessary siren for the people out on that outskirt in that southeast corner of the city. But elevation can make a severe impact on how well the sound travels. Sometimes if we have a storm come in, and by the way, these are designed knowing that most of our storms obviously come in from the southwest or directly south, either way. So if we ever have a storm that comes in from the north, which we do have every now and again, or from the northwest, our coverage will not be quite as good based on the way that our sirens are set up, just because that means they're fighting into the wind a lot of times. And so we don't get quite as good coverage as a result. I know that these are perfect circles on our map here, but it's not really designed that way, as the key will tell you that some of our elevation and landscape and stuff impact the way that the sirens actually go. So we can have some of those negative impacts if we get a really rare storm that comes in from the north or the northwest, which for a tornado, that is very, very rare. Our sirens are only as good as how well our public actually heeds the warning. If we turn on our sirens and the first reaction of the public is to go out and take pictures, then our sirens are pretty ineffective, all right? We can only do as much as the public is willing to take heed of that particular warning. So when we sound the sirens, we need people to go inside. We don't want them going out to try to video the storm, photograph the storm, but that is a natural inclination of some people, and there's not a whole lot we can do about that, obviously. But it's only as good as those people actually taking heed to the warning. We do not sound the sirens all the time, as you probably know. And so we hope that people understand that those 1 or 2 times a year that we average sounding the sirens, that there is something nasty coming towards us, and that they get indoors quickly and get more information. The other key to this is once they're actually inside, is they've got to actually seek more information here. So they need to either have a phone app, they need to have a NOAA weather radio, which is the very best thing that they can have, or they need to obviously be tuning into their local broadcast media, which that's going to be your TV and just basic radio stations and stuff like that. It is amazing, though, just so everybody is aware that, you know, we still do have people in our community, obviously, who the siren is their warning. Even in this day and age, with the amount of technology that we have, we still have those people who will sometimes call and be like, I heard the siren, is there a tornado warning? Yes, there is, you know, because they don't have the TV on, maybe they don't have their radio on, and we still have people, obviously, who aren't doing cell phones and all that kind of stuff, so we need to keep those people in mind, which is why we would really encourage those people to make sure that they at least have the weather radio. If nothing else in your home, have a weather radio. In addition to, because those are going to be the very 2 best things, is the weather radio and our siren coverage. Usually will get you alerted to any severe weather that's coming. And then the last couple of things here. So once people are inside, and those people who have a NOAA weather radio, and we do program some of these for people throughout the city, but I would always encourage people to make sure that they are programming them, not just for the city of Raymore, but for those counties to the south and west of us. So Miami County and Johnson County, Kansas is who I always would encourage people to program their radios for. That gives you the alert that the storm is coming. 95% of our severe weather is going to come exactly from the southwest. All right, so we want people to make sure that they have those particular areas programmed, because if they're having severe weather, there's a real good chance that it's coming to us. This is, the second one is a recommendation of the National Weather Service, and we agree with it here in the city of Raymore, which is a cell phone with a weather app is great, but many people have multiple weather apps, which then they end up getting things confused. They end up switching from one to the other. Warnings may not come up as quickly on some of the apps on phones. So one particular weather app, doesn't matter what it is necessarily, but sticking with one so that you know exactly what you're looking at, exactly where to go and what to click on when you're on that particular app, so that you can do it quickly and efficiently is what we would recommend here, instead of trying to have multiple weather apps. Even for people like me who have become kind of weather geeks, if you want to call me that, that's okay. You know, even I mean, I'm sticking with one particular weather app as well, just because it's much, much easier. I know exactly where to go on the screen. Most of you know about the Everbridge severe weather notifications that go through the county, so people can sign up. That we do have the sign up link on our city page. It's also on the county emergency management page, so there's lots of different ways that you can get to that. If anybody ever contacts you about Everbridge, just make sure that we always let them know you can dictate what kind of alerts you get so that you're not getting 12,000 phone calls based on, if you sign up just as a county person and you say, I want severe thunderstorm, flash floods, everything, you're going to get a lot of phone calls. What we would encourage, obviously, is that you make sure to set up the notifications exactly the way you want them. If you want them just for tornado warnings, set it up just for tornado warnings. So that's the only call that you get. And you can do that when you sign up for Everbridge. Obviously, we want people to monitor those particular conditions on TV and radio. And then we also need people to know where they're going to go in terms of a shelter. And this is not necessarily a point that where are you going to go when you're in your house. It's if you're leaving the house during some of these particular events, or you know those events are coming in the afternoon, maybe you have soccer games or whatever, do you know where you're going to go should that stuff roll in while you're actually out away from your home? That's actually the tougher thing for us to get the public to make sure that they're aware of their surroundings, is once they're away from their home and in unfamiliar areas, where can I go as a part of getting out of some of this particular severe weather? And that's a constant public education campaign on behalf of all of us in emergency management and first responders and stuff. We need to continue to let people know how they can do that. What are we doing here within the city of Raymore to try to get this information to the public? So we have storm spotting classes every March as a part of the National Weather Service's severe weather awareness. And so we do discuss, obviously, the warning sirens in those particular classes. So that's once a year. That's within Cass County. We do a social media campaign every spring and fall to try to get people to sign up for Everbridge, to teach them, hey, this is the difference between a watch and a warning, and go through all of those different things to try to make sure that the public is aware. We do go out and program weather radios throughout the community, and we do presentations to discuss storm safety. Some of those have been done at schools. Sometimes we go out to Foxwood to do the weather radio programming. Typically, we try to go to areas where we know people might struggle a little bit more to understand how to get that particular stuff programmed and to understanding storm safety. This next one here, I am actually the co-chair of the integrated warning team within the MARC region, and I forgot, and Chief can chastise me later for this, to tell you exactly what the integrated warning team is. The integrated warning team in the MARC region is a group of TV broadcasters, meteorologists from TV, so it's the whole, I mean, it's almost everyone. About the only one who doesn't participate is Gary Lezak. All the rest of them from the major networks do participate in this. So it's your TV broadcast media, it's emergency management, and it's the National Weather Service who all get together. And so we all represent that. It's a team of about 10 of us that get together on how can we make sure that our warnings are consistent throughout the entire Kansas City region. So when you see colors on your TV screen, for example, are they consistent from network to network? When we sound warnings, are we being consistent from one community to the next in terms of when we sound our sirens, for how long we sound our sirens, when we're going to restart the sirens? Are all of those things consistent so that as you go from one community to the next throughout the Kansas City area, you're going to have the same expectations and get the same response from the emergency management community? And it is a tough sell. I just want everybody to know that. We're not there yet. We don't have a uniform policy throughout the Kansas City area on sounding the sirens. We're closer, but we're not there yet. There's still some people who want to sound them for different reasons. And so we're working on it. The TV networks have gotten a lot better with it in terms of trying to bring their coverage in, not sensationalizing their coverage too much. So we're trying, and that's a concerted effort that we're doing as a group of us. And then we take our recommendations out to the broader communities. So the entire emergency management community, the entire National Weather Service within Pleasant Hill will look at the information that we get. Same with those broadcast partners. that's kind of where I'm at here on the warning system stuff. I know some of you probably have fielded questions from citizens. I'm going to save the last slide here, so we'll do that when we're actually done with the presentation. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about why we do what we do.
Mr. Barrington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Murdoch, great presentation. I'm going to make sure I get this right. AKA the extreme and self-proclaimed weather geek, right?
Yes, absolutely spot on.
Perfect.
Spot on.
Great presentation. I want to say thank you for that. The last weather event we had, we're, I guess, fortunate enough to be within a stone's throw of the siren on Hubach Hill and the one right by us. So we noticed as soon as the siren went off, the news channel reported that there was a tornado in Belton heading towards Raymore. And so it identified something in our system that I don't think we need to make any changes to our system. I think we just need to continue doing what we're doing, educating the public and informing them that when the sirens shut off. I had some neighbors the next day ask me that question, and so I brought it up with Mr. Fairborn. So we need to continue emergency management, maybe in our communications team, just letting people know and informing people that when the sirens are off, that we do need to still take cover and monitor electronic devices.
And one thing I want to say about that particular event, by the way, 2 weeks ago, is that unfortunately, right after the sirens went off, we also had misinformation being sent out by people saying that it was radar reflectivity, you know, that was the tornado. Even though it was trained spotters that were saying, hey, we've seen the rotation, and maybe it wasn't on the ground, but if we see rotation, it's worthy of sounding the sirens. You know, I mean, we need to protect the public, and unfortunately in that particular incident, it wasn't, you know, it was a few minutes after that we already had that getting posted that, you know, we shouldn't have sounded the sirens because, you know, there was no actual tornado. And I think Chief, and I hope Mr. Fairborn would agree with this, we're always going to err on the side of safety here. You know, I'd much rather sound it and be wrong than not sound it, you know, and the tornado actually happened.
Ms. Delgawad? Thank
you. I think that the siren sounding for only 3 minutes, and when the siren goes off, then it's all clear, is probably the point that we need to hit hardest with people. I think that's the one people misunderstand most often. They think when the siren stops, then it's safe to come out of your basement. Right. Because I think most people can hear it in their basement, even if that's not what it's intended for. I had a couple of questions, though. First, you said one app. Is there an app that you recommend? Is there
the National Weather Service app? Absolutely. Weather Service. And that's the one that we stick with as a city. We base our information off what the National Weather Service is putting out. Now, me as an emergency manager, I'm fortunate because I can be on National Weather Service chat, and so I can see these things happening right before they're going to issue warnings and stuff like that. So I'm fortunate that way. But the National Weather Service app would be the best one.
And not just for the storms. We also use NWS consistently now. They're the only forecast that we'll use for snow events as well.
Good to know. Another question. I know we hear in the community sometimes that you can go to the fire department and get a smoke detector. I don't know if you still can do that, but that was the thing for a while. Is there a resource for free radios anywhere? For people who maybe couldn't afford to get a radio, is there a way they can get one less expensively or for free?
Okay, that's a good question. We did have a project through the MARC, Emergency Management Services, to provide weather radios through a program. We have given out all of those radios. Now, I have not heard them say that they're going to try to get a new cache of those radios to give away. I did make a note here, though, that radios, the NOAA weather radios, if you actually contact Midland, who is the main supplier of weather radios, that if you contact Midland and you have a financial need, you usually can get them for significantly cheaper. That being said, Price Chopper still does sell them, and they'll range and you can get different models, obviously, but they'll range anywhere from $20 to $30. And I do love to program radios. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but I can do it, no problem.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Quick question. Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned regarding if you're out and about knowing where to go as far as storm shelters. what are the, or do we have designated areas within the city of Raymore as far as storm shelters?
Right, so another good question. So I'm going to reference 3 things here on this. If we're in our parks, each one of our concession stands is a storm shelter and can be used as such. So if we're at Rec Park or Memorial Park, those concession stands do serve as a storm shelter and can withstand that, so you could go there. Our designated shelter within the city of Raymore is First Baptist Church of Raymore. In severe weather events, especially like some of these that we've known are coming, church staff does have that opened up and is ready to go. We don't broadcast that we will be opening a shelter because we don't want people traveling in severe weather if they don't need to. So if they're out and about and they need a place to go, we do have that is usually open, but we don't want obviously people leaving their homes to try to go to a shelter right in the middle of severe weather.
And the follow-up to that, or is there signage that shows, it states that these are designated storm shelters, so that if I am out and about and I routinely see that, I remember, oh, this is the location?
The church does have signage on their doors now, I believe, and I will check to be sure of that, but we were supposed to be getting signage for that. As for the parks, that is something I would actually have to ask Mr. Mustine, because I am not for sure if that is on there. And Mr. Fairborn, you may.
I don't think that we have them, that signage on there, but that's a great idea.
Right, and we need to get that on there, yes.
That way, as the more I use the facility, the more I see it, it's now ingrained in my memory that if I am out, I know where to go.
Right, and most people do know, obviously, I mean, the universal sign of the tornado.
Correct.
To be put up next to the door, right.
Correct.
And in nearly every event that we've had people come here. To the police, lobby downstairs, and we are able to secure individuals, in our underground area. But I had a family from Belton in this event 2 weeks ago that actually came here.
Excellent, excellent. And then one last question with regard to the Everbridge. When you do sound, or when the outdoor sirens are sound, is it simultaneous to the Everbridge notice goes out, or are those 2 separate notifications?
It actually could be separate. It depends on when we have made the decision to sound the sirens here. In the case of 2 weeks ago, I think we actually sounded sirens just after I'm pretty sure Everbridge came right before us, but they got the warning at the exact same time. We made sure the Belton was going to sound theirs, then we sounded. So usually it's going to be very, very close. I know 2 years ago when we were sounding the sirens, we still had code red, which was just essentially the same thing, and we would routinely beat code red in terms of us sounding the sirens.
And one last, just out of curiosity, you said that we control the sirens for Lake Winnebago. Mm-hmm. How has that come to be? Is that a long-term, or is that going to be? So
Lake Winnebago in 2006 asked us to do that. They wanted us to have that particular control. Their sirens used to be controlled by Lee Summit. And their theory is that Lee Summit is the wrong direction from their particular town, as opposed to Raymore being on the south side, knowing that the storms are going to be coming towards them, and so they asked for us to do that.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Circo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2 things. I do have the National Weather app on my phone, and let me tell you something. I got it set for severe storm, tornadoes, and that thing will ring and talk to me all night long. 2 in the morning, I hear it. You have hail in your area, you have lightning in your area, it'll wake me up. But it tells me, so it's good. I like that. I wake up, I know something's coming because it's middle of the night, and I can actually get up for that, because sometimes people sleep through those things and they can be traumatic. Another thing, when I had my insurance office down here at Whirlwind, they always had us go to the Christian church there. When they had severe storms, they'd have all the people who had office buildings there if they wanted to drive over there, and we did that before in the past when we had tornadoes coming out of Kansas heading this way. Mm-hmm. And we went over to the church, and they have an area down there under the church. But they do open that up for the businesses and stuff, so that big Christian church has done that for years that I know of.
And I think one of the things that I would say as a city employee is there's going to be private entities and NGOs who are going to open up things that we probably don't even know about. Okay. And it's awesome if they're helping out their neighbors and stuff like that. But we probably don't know about every issue where they actually do open those things up.
Yeah.
But that's excellent. And Foxwoods, does open up their huge room down. Holmes Hall is also open.
And the First Baptist Church is the only one that's actually been inspected and certified. So
right, which is why we promote it as the city.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
This was for Chief, by the way.
Julia, I know you're upset. You just gotta breathe. We both just gotta breathe. Cow. I gotta go, Julia. We got cows. Another cow.
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. I'm sure Mr. Holman liked that. So we're now we're to the other, and I believe, Mr. Holman, you did have something for other?
I do, sir. Thank you. I would like to take leave of the council to ask the council and the mayor to take a field trip sometime in the near future. I'm going to guess month of June, July, and what I would like to ask the council to do would have to be on a Saturday afternoon, probably early afternoon, and go down to Kansas City Southern Railroad headquarters in downtown Kansas City. It's roughly 12th and Broadway. It's, what is the church, Jim? Immaculate Conception? Municipal auditorium is down in that area, so if you're familiar with that, it's right there by I-70 and Broadway. That's their headquarters down there, and on the back side of their new building that they built several years ago, they have a fully restored business car known as the Harry S. Truman, and they have it in a covered, I don't know what you'd call, what would be a proper term for that, Mr. Fearborn? Gazebo's not accurate.
It's a very nice garden.
Pavilion. Yeah, it's a garden park-like setting. And it was kind of the inspiration or impetus for the rail car project that I brought up and that we ended up putting the money back to do the improvements at TB Hannah Station. We didn't get the best information on pricing when we first looked at that project. I still think it might be viable, and so I would really like for you all to see on site, if you're willing to give me a little bit of your time. I'm going to guess 2 hours. That's 30 minutes down, 30 minutes back, and then whatever time we spend there unless we go eat. But I've made contact with Doug Banks, who's an assistant vice president with KCS, and he's in charge of the historic fleet as well as grounds and business. He has graciously agreed to come in on his time if I arrange this, give us a private tour of the car so you could see what we might be looking at should we decide to take on that project in the future and allocate funds toward it. So, you know, I'm thinking we would probably set up something the way Doug talked for him to come in, maybe like we arrive down there around a 1:30 time frame on a Saturday. We're there no more than an hour, so I said 2 hours total, 30 minutes down. I don't even think we'd spend an hour there, would you, Jim, unless there were a lot of questions and people wanted them to open the bar or something like that. That's about it. But you could get a really good feel of kind of what we were looking at doing, and then if we want to look at reviving that project and putting some funds towards it and going out and getting a rail car and doing that, I think you could see it. It's certainly very unique, and it's very functional as well.
Is there an interest in doing something like that? I guess, is that something, Mr. Fairborn, would you coordinate that, or how? Yeah. Okay.
I'll
All right.
call Mr. Banks if it's okay, and I'll get a date or two on a Saturday and see what we can do. I was very gracious of him to offer. I mean, I said he's coming in as off time, but you would, even if we don't do the project, it will be a trip you will remember and you'll enjoy. I promise you that. Would you agree, Mr. Fearborn, since you've been down there?
It was pretty impressive. Even if you're not completely on board with the rail car, the setting itself was really interesting as far as giving some ideas of space usage. I mean, because you're down there and suddenly you're in this idyllic, almost rural setting that is just perfectly manicured lawn, but you're at 12th and Broadway. And it's just, wow, where did this come from?
I would assume we would do something like we did for the last economic development tour. We'd get a bus or something to take us down there, meet here at City Hall, and then go down and take a look.
Okay, anything else?
That concludes everything for this evening.
Then I think we can conclude our meeting. Thank you.